Thank you, everyone. I know it is very packed in here today, so thank you for deciding to join my session this morning. And I know I am also the person that stands between you and food, so hopefully you're not going to get too hangry in this session. So today we are going to be talking about some ScreenFlow stuff. Very briefly, just to give you a bit of an introduction to myself. So my name is Chris. I work as a principal consultant at a firm called Nebula. So I've been working in the ecosystem for over 11 years now. Along that way, I've picked up a few certifications and trailhead badges, as you do. But we're not here to talk about me. We're here to talk about flows today. So the first thing I want to do is explain why the title is like this, apart from trying to catch your eye when you're going through the list on the website. And that's to do with when we're talking about flows and when Salesforce talks about flows, naturally the first thing that comes to everyone's mind is record trigger flows. And that's because we've come from a world of workflow rules, and then that started blending into process builders, and ScreenFlows has been there, but people naturally think, oh, I knew this action will trigger this off and we need to do this process. So often people forget that ScreenFlows exist and the power that they hold within us. So this session, I'm going to go through some real life examples that we have done and have used, and the benefits that have gone through that, and put those into some context, obviously some bits that have been simplified for demo purposes. But first of all, to make sure you're all awake and not too bad at the moment, who remembers when flows look like this? Show of hands, please. Quite a few, yeah. I remember back when I was an admin and we got this tool, and they were like, there's this tool called Flow. And it was really complex. It was back in the day of Flash, when Flash was king on the internet. And there was lots of things that you could do. And as an admin, as someone who, I don't write code, but I love to design and build processes. And this was a really nice place where I could then flex those muscles and do stuff. But ScreenFlows existed all the way back then, but they had some limitations. You go, oh, right, I want to show this to someone. I was like, oh, how do I do that? Or, oh, I need to build a Visualforce page. How do I do it? All right, I'm Googling. How do I embed get a Visualforce page to embed a flow into it? So I'd be doing all of these things to then do something, and it was never slick. It worked, it did processes, and I had some really good wins with that. I remember one process that we had where we were asking salespeople to enter in who they were competing against on business. And the business had decided at the time that they wanted 3 competitors logged for every quote, not every opportunity, every quote. And as you know, and I know there's definitely salespeople in the room because someone's looking at me right now, but they generally are coin operated. And what I mean by that is if you're not putting money in the slot, they're not going to be doing anything. And from their perspective, when you're doing processes and you're asking them for loads of data and input, after they've lost a deal or they've won a deal, they don't care at that point. They're moving on. They're on to the next thing. And we built a process that used the ScreenFlow to try and help automate some of those steps, embedded it into the opportunity record page. And when we used that, within 2 months, we saw the amount of deals that were having competitors logged go up by 40%, just by moving it into one place and making it more prominent. Because people knew this information, they just couldn't be bothered to go and do all those clicks. It was opportunity, click through to the quote, click edit, go find the fields, edit the fields, click save, go back. Put it on one screen where they just fill out the fields and click save. They were happy. But then Lightning came along, and one of the first things that when Lightning first came up, and this is the original lightning fast Lightning version that got its reputation, and within that there was some weaknesses within Lightning when it first came out. It was slow, it was a bit clunky, but people gradually started knowing it and loving it. But one of the best things that I found in Lightning was I can embed these processes where I want, when I want, within those record pages. And that really gave us the element and the power to start really adopting ScreenFlows. And this is where I still find a lot of the power today. just because you can build stuff that can just feel like it's part of the workflow. You're not disjointing it. It's being controlled by you of where and when it's shown and how it's shown. So when we're looking at automation types, there's a few different things that I think we tend to consider. And the one thing of when I'm talking to people about why we would look at screen flows as a tool for automation, I tend to break it down into three categories, which would be to simplify processes. Do I have to go through multiple records, editing, clicking save buttons, flicking through things, or can I just have one page where I could just simplify it, give it to users? And I think a really good example of that is things like lookup fields. They are not the most user-friendly from a person. I want a list, I want a pick list, but with records, and the ScreenFlow can do that. So let's do those types of things. It also falls into the category of validation. There's nothing more frustrating than when you're using the system and you hit the save button and you get a validation rule pop up and you go, oh, you haven't done this, and then you have to go and sort it, and then you press the button again, and you're going through that cycle, getting more and more frustrated, wanting to throw your laptop out the window. Give people validation as they're going through that process and allowing you to do that. And then there's also the natural element where all the flows come in, which is automate solutions. Why should I have to do something? If A is always going to be B, why do I have to put B in myself? Let the system do that for me. So obviously I'm talking about screen flows, and the next thing that tends to come up with screen flows is we get into this sort of camp area where there's wars between pro code and low code and no code, and people are like, yeah, we need to go down this route. And I think from my perspective, it's not a choice between do we go down the code route or the no code route. You pick the options that work for you and you blend them together. You pick the right tool for the thing that you're doing at that moment in time. And it's sometimes there are circumstances that are not to do with the actual tools themselves. Obviously, we know with all types of flows, there are certain limitations that you can't do that code can do within the platform. So sometimes you have that sort of forcing your arm to go that way. Sometimes you can physically do something, but it's going to take you about 20 times longer to do it in a flow than it will take a developer to write it in Apex. So there are elements of this, but I think it's bringing those things together and choosing the right tool. And it's also for the right tool for your business, because you might not have the capabilities for a developer. So that might force your arm a little bit more to go, let's go down this route. So what I'm trying to say is I'm not here going, always use flows for absolutely everything. Please don't. Pick the tool for the right job for what you're trying to achieve. That's how you're going to get the results. And the way that I tend to look at that is all the different types of automation. I don't know about your house, but I've got millions of Lego bricks in my house from my bits for the kids' stuff, but they're everywhere. So I tend to think of things in terms of Lego. There are different parts of Salesforce that are a bit like Lego bricks. So we've got our different types of flows, we've got Apex, we've got web components, things like that. And putting those together to build something is where you get the real strength. Like when you're building a wall, you don't just want to stack the same thing up on top of each other because it's going to fall over. You need to sort of build that structure that's in place. But what do I mean by that actually in real life? What I mean is, we can use things that are flows that call code, that do stuff, or the code could be calling flows to get what you need. So in this example, what we're looking at is a user's clicking a button. From that, we're going and find an opportunity. We're showing them a screen. On that screen, we're using a web component that we're then displaying because there are some limitations in what we wanted to show users. So we're going to do that. We've then got native tools. So we've got things like the action button, which is a great new feature in beta, and I will repeat this many times. Beta features, use with caution, really shouldn't be in your production org, but they are great fun to play with. But we're using that to then call an auto launch flow. Once we've gone through that, the user clicks through, we're then creating records, we're making decisions off of that, we're using standard actions that Flow give us to do things like saying Slack notifications or emails, we're then updating records, we're then going off and we're then calling some other code to go and do something, because we can do that all within our single flow, but we don't have to always do everything in the one flow. like, again, a bit going back to the brick analogy, we want to keep things as modular as possible. Reuse elements. Do we need to always include, oh, when I update this opportunity, that means that I always need to update this field from A to B? Well, we shouldn't have to rebuild that every time we build automation. You build that as a standard flow or in a trigger, and that just runs outside of this process because it will just go through as that record's being saved, as you're going through the process, your screen flow is clicking, it's doing something. It's then triggering off another process that does something. So we're reducing the complexity of the flows that we're building and being a bit more modular with it, which is then great because we can reuse stuff, because there's nothing worse than rebuilding the same thing again and again, or sometimes your flows just get a bit unwieldy. You're going there, you're looking at it going, oh, what have I done? Like, where has this gone? And you can then start going, actually, this is something that could be modular. So I'm going to take this out of my flow, build it as a separate one, and I'm going to call that as a subflow. So we can do a lot with that and build with blocks, but utilize the tools that we're doing. So obviously this session, we're going to talk about flow itself, and I'm going to go through some examples within that. And this is where we get into the land where the live demo gods will decide which side I fall onto, and we'll pick up those pieces of whether the Wi-Fi is going to work or not. What we're going to do is walk through a couple of scenarios of actual things in the way that people say it, because someone will not come to you as a business user and go, I need a screen flow to do this. They will give you some information that will then give you the context that you then need to translate into the technology. So we've got Thomas here, who is a sales director, who's talking about how the marketing team have started running new campaigns, they're channel aligned, and they're trying to generate new leads. But he wants to make sure that these leads get to people as quickly as possible via Slack. So when we dissect that information and look at it, there's a couple of things to pull out of there. So we've got new channel aligned campaigns. They're not giving us a set number. They're not going, there's one thing that we're doing. We know that there's likely to be a reusable element on this. So we think, but the best way to think about that is, don't think that there's going to be one thing, there's going to be multiple involved, and how can we then ensure that that scales well. The next thing is, we're talking about Slack and right and relevant people. So we need something to allow things to be configured. And if we can do that and put that into the user's hands, rather than putting it into the admin's hands, then we're going to get a lot quicker runtime within that. So it'll be a lot easier for the business to operate and change and pivot. So from a marketing perspective, you do campaign, it doesn't work, you try something else. Or you do something that works and you keep doing that thing. So you want the business to be able to pivot and do that without having to come to IT each time to the admins to say, can you build me this version now? So how can that look? So I'm now in Salesforce, and within here, I have a screen flow embedded into my page. So within here, I've got this one flow component here, which is looking at Slack channels. So we've got our London's Calling campaign, and what we want to do is have the ability to link this campaign to a specific Slack channel. So within here, I'm going to go down the drop-down list, and that's going to show me all the Slack channels that I've got active in my Slack account. But there isn't really one that fits. So if there was something that existed, I could select that, and we're using native functionality here to do this within Flow. But in this example, what I want to do is say, actually, I need to create a new Slack channel. So within this process, I've now taken the name of the campaign, and I've started making a Slack channel name out of that. Because, again, if I'm trying to automate things, and I know that it's generally going to be that it's going to be the campaign name that I want the Slack channel name to be, why should the user input that? We input that, we do the work for them. The next element is then validating that. So you can see here underneath where we've got the channel name in the component, we've got a green box. And as we generally know, green generally means good things are happening. But if I start typing, and I'm going to type some wrong gibberish, because there are some limitations on how long a Slack channel name can be, we start warning the user that they're going to be breaking something. We then warn them that they've broken something. But we're doing that to help them validate before they hit send, before they then get those beautiful flow error emails come through to them, that they can then go, oh, I don't know what that is. But from in that, we can do that. We can block them from doing things that they shouldn't be doing, and we can validate it for them. So let's put it back to the original name and click Create Slack Channel. So what that has done is that has created my Slack channel, and to show you that it did actually work, there is the Slack channel I've just created. Not only has it created it, I've also published a message in that channel to say, I have created this Slack channel and I have linked this campaign to this Slack channel, which then allows me to then start posting to it. So what this now has done is this has linked my campaign to my Slack channel, and I've programmed some options in there. And all I've done in the back end is I've got a couple of fields that are controlling these options. But what this does is every time a campaign member is created, it will check to see if this rule exists. And if it does, we then are sending a notification to the Slack channel to say this lead has been added to this campaign with this status. And we've got a couple of configuration options in there as well. So that's putting the control with the marketing team to say, I want to be able to do this, and this is how I can do it. So don't know about you, but I like to actually get into that and figure out how these types of things look and feel. And to get this simply, what we've got here is we've got a screen flow. That's then being embedded into the page, and we're passing the record into it. We've then got a decision point. Have we linked a Slack channel or not? Yes or no? If we have, we want to show them the screen that we first saw, which is, do you want to create a Slack channel or link a Slack channel? If it's yes, we're going to that configuration option of what do you want this, this piece of automation to do. We're then going down those pages, and based on the options that we do, we're basically assigning fields, updating things, and calling actions. So things such as the linking the Slack channel is being controlled by a native out-of-the-box component that shows you when you've connected your Slack to Salesforce, you can just get a list of all the Slack channels you have available to you. So let's use that native functionality to do that. We're then also doing things such as calling subflows, we're calling actions. So again, when we're talking about that modular element, we're breaking it down, getting other things to do the job. But this isn't doing anything to do with the campaign member. That's a different flow that's doing that process, that's utilizing this information that we've done within there. One of the things you might be thinking, if you haven't seen it before, is how did that thing change from green to yellow to red? Because that's not native. And there is a great blog, which I will share with you later on about this, but there are parts of the Lightning design system that we can embed that code into a text template, and within that, that will then format the page to show us what we've got in there. So when we looked at the link Slack channel, so that's our native component. When we look at this one, you can see that I'm just calling something that says my warning banner, and that's controlling those elements that's saying change this to these colors based on the Lightning design system that I've got in there. And it's a really useful way to change the interface to make it more intuitive, to make it easier for users to understand and validate them in real time with what we're doing without having to write custom code or anything like that. So within this, from this example, we've allowed the marketing team to self-service. The sales team is seeing the relevant stuff because it's going into the Slack channels that they care about. We've built something that's low code. We've got some code in there. We're using some components also from unofficial SF, which I'll talk about later, to give us a little bit more configuration options than we've got out of the box. And we're able to leverage the native Slack stuff. So continuing with marketing, we've now got from the other side. So we've got Charlotte, who's the head of marketing, and she's obviously looking from the other side of the page, just going, we're running these new campaigns, but I need to understand which ones are effective. So I've asked the sales team to choose which campaign that helped them close the opportunity, but they're finding the process complicated and time-consuming, which, as we talked about earlier, means it's not happening. And generally, if you speak to marketers, it's a common theme, this type of stuff around campaign attribution. So breaking that down again, we're trying to understand what's effective. We want to understand, as a marketer, you want to say, right, this worked, this didn't work. Do this, don't do that anymore. But then we also want to say, something's been complicated and time-consuming. So how can we simplify it, make it easier for people to put the information in so that we can then get the sales team to be inputting that data in for us? So if we head back into Salesforce again, this time we're going to go to an opportunity record. So again, similar place to where it was before. We've got another screen flow embedded into the flow. And what this is doing is it's showing me a list of the campaigns. So I've got campaign influence running on this opportunity, and it's showing me the campaigns that have been linked. But I care about which one got the deal over the line. And we could use the standard primary campaign field, but you need to know what the name of the campaign that you're searching for is to be able to type that in, to be able to search it, to be able to link it, to be able to save it. Whereas here we can go, okay, these are the list of the options you're picking from, and give them that subset. So we're simplifying it, making it easier for them. But we're also adding a bit of flexibility in there. So we're looking at that and going, nah, that deal wasn't because of that. I want to change the campaign. So actually, it was the London's Calling campaign that was the one that did it. So I can search, find the campaigns, save it. But I'm putting some guardrails in place. So you can only search active campaigns. You can only link campaigns that are relevant to that through that component. So you're making it simple and easy for me to update, change, and edit that. So again, all I'm doing is updating something, but I'm simplifying it, making it more user-friendly. I'm putting it in a place that allows people to do stuff quicker. And I can do things like that doesn't appear till we're further down in the sales cycle, or we prompt people to do this at a later date. So again, if we look into our flow, we're passing the opportunity record into that. We're looking for those campaign influence records because that's what we want to present the person with. We're then just showing those records. And then we've got those buttons. So one of the components I find really useful on Unofficial SF, which comes out of the box with one of their base packs, is called the Flow button bar. And this allows me to create any buttons that I want, style them in different ways so I can control things better. So within that, that's why I'm giving people the option to say, do you want to add to the campaign or do you want to save? And then from that, I can put decisions after that to say, if you click this button, do this. If you click this button, do that. So from this, I can then process that, get to my decision. What did I press? Okay, I've pressed that, I'm going down this route, or I've pressed that, I'm going down that route. So from this, very simple, something very quick to build, is allowing sales teams to put the information in, which then feeds marketing, which then marketing feeds sales, and we get the whole happy sales of that sales and marketing alignment working for us, just by putting something in a slightly different way, just to make it easier for people to put it into the system. So if we look at this, what we've done, we've simplified that interface. So we're updating the records in there. We show people what they need to see to help them simplify that. And then we're extending the functionality to allow it to be flexible. It's because if you frustrate people by putting too heavy restrictions on theirs, by going, no, you can only select the campaigns that are already linked, then people are just not going to use your tool. So give them that added ability to say, actually, if you're an advanced user, you're more likely to be able to do this, or you'll want to connect those campaigns yourself, but still keep those guardrails in place. And pushing something that prompts the user to do it. It's in their eye line, it's there, it's prominent, it's easy to do. There's no reason, there's no excuse. We're removing that complexity, we're removing that element where we've said, this is time consuming, this is difficult, and you say, how difficult is it to pick that drop down and click one button? I know before you had to do like 5, 6 clicks. We've simplified that. You don't have the excuse anymore. So final example I want to go through this morning is looking at the most complex one. All right? So we're going to take it up a notch a bit. We're also going to take the danger level up a bit as well within this. So this is when the finance people come along, right? And the finance team are going, we're actually losing customers due to the way that renewal opportunities work, because people are making mistakes. Mistakes happen when you're inputting data manually. So we want to simplify that process, and we also want to put an element of an automated uplift in there. So the bits that Amelia is looking at is there's a lack of renewal opportunities being created, and when they are being created, people aren't doing them properly. So if we know an opportunity is going to renew and there's a set process in place, let's automate that, make it simpler for the user to do that. And then the second part is talking about simplifying that process and automating it. So there's an uplift that's available. If we know what that is, allow that configuration to happen within the system and to control that. So if we go back to our opportunity. And let's say with this opportunity, everything has been great, and we have won this deal. The eagle eyes of you would have noticed that the edit button has changed to a renew opportunity button. So again, we're just using standard out-of-the-box functionality. We're using a dynamic action here to say only show the edit button when the opportunity is open, show this when it's closed, and closed and won. And so this time we're bringing our screen flow in a slightly different way. We're using a button to control that. So this time what I'm going to do is I click on that renewal button. And thank you, Salesforce, for reminding me that there's a recycle bin. And from within this renewal, we've pulled the product. We're going to pull the products out of that original opportunity so that we can put them across. We're showing what the current amount is, and we're also saying that we want to put percentage uplift in there. But to do that validation process, we want to say, actually, what's that new amount going to be? Is that correct before I do this? So I've got this recalculate button that's going to go off and then calculate that number for me. So what that's doing is that's using our new fancy action button that's going off, calling a different flow. The flow's then running through this saying, right, get these products, add a 4% increase to those products, roll them back up, send them back to this original flow with a number, and then display that number, which means I can then configure that information. So if I change the uplift amount or actually say, no, they're not going to have the service product anymore, the amount that's displayed is based on the products that have been selected and the amount that I've input. And then I put in the renewal date on there because that's what I need to know for the close date of the opportunity. So when I then click the create renewal button, that's going to go off. That's going to create my renewal opportunity. It's going to take the products that I've selected, which were preset from the original opportunity. It's going to automatically apply that uplift to the pricing of that so that I've automatically got that. So the numbers then automatically come across for me. It is also going to check a flag so that that renewal opportunity button disappears from that original one so they can't renew the opportunity again because it will happen. And I've already got an opportunity here now with products in there. All set up, ready to go. But again, this is where we said we get a bit more complex. So the flow itself, build-wise, is not too complex, but we're doing a couple of different things within here. So first of all, when we're using buttons, we have to treat it in a slightly different way, because with buttons, we can't pass the record through. We just have to pass the ID of the opportunity through. So we then have to go and get the record so that we can then start searching for more information and presenting it through to us. So we're going to that, we're getting the opportunity, we're getting the products, and then we're then displaying that on the screen. So the screen that you've seen looks like this. And what we're doing here is the top pieces here are just text components. So you can see I've got this box style light. So you may have noticed that those boxes at the top were little gray ones. Again, they are styles of shades that you can apply that are a part of the Lightning design system. The great thing about that is obviously if they change the Lightning design system, you'll get changes because you're not hard coding those color changes or anything in there. So we're pulling that through, and I'll show you how that looks in a second. We're doing some dynamic elements, so we've got some flags in there to say have they made any changes to the input so that we need to recalculate that. So that's how we change between showing the number and showing the thing saying recalculate. We've then got our action button. So if you haven't seen this yet, because it came out in the summer release in beta, what this allows you to do is point at a different action and put some configuration options in there. So it's a bit like a screen flow. That we can call a subflow when we're going through that flow process. The difference is that we're staying on the same screen, so we're simplifying it for the users. I think one of the big limitations that people have had with screen flows in the past is before all of these dynamic actions and displays and stuff started coming across, everything involves the user clicking the next button. So it was always like, oh, all right, I want to change this thing, next. And as you can imagine, the workflow within that from a user perspective isn't the best. So we want to improve that and improve that process for people. So what we do is we keep them on the same screen as much as possible and allow them to play around with that information, validate the things before they go and do it. Because as we know, if we just automatically push that through and go, great, it's a renewal, push all the products through, it's going to be harder to unpick that from the salesperson's perspective than it is for you to validate that before it happens. We've then also got some other Ps. So we've got some standard components for changing the uplift and the dates and pre-populating those. And then we also have data table within here. So again, this is another unofficial SF package that allows you to do stuff. The reason I've used this rather than the standard table, because there is a standard one, is there are certain limitations with the standard one. It can't do certain things within that. One of the things that it can't do properly is currencies, and you have to write a bit of code to get this to do currencies properly as well. But it's just if you've got multi-currencies in your org, it displays the currency of the record, but with the symbol from your user profile. So it might be a dollar amount, but it's showing it as pounds, which confuses people. So you have to do a few workarounds to get that working. But we've got some bits in there that we can do some more things with that, and we've got some more control over that. And as I mentioned, if we go into here and look at our text templates for our lightbox style, that is all we're doing. So this piece here is all we're writing to say, draw this in the box and color it gray. And that piece, that little tag there, is you just head to the Lightning Design System website. You go and find the component. So the ones that I tend to use the most are the ones that scope notification bar, and that one's just box with the shade element. They've written this down for you. You copy, you paste, you put it in your text template, you merge it into it, and magically it will happen when you render the flow. So it's a really nice way of very simply building stuff and styling things to separate information. So having key bits of information in boxes that might change color or do something like that, it's really easy to control that, and it makes it more user-friendly for the end user, so they understand what's actually going on within that. So once we've gone through the screen, all we're doing then is we're processing that record, we're creating the renewal, we're updating the original one. We've actually got a subflow that's processing the products element, so we're just passing that to another flow to do that work, so that can help happen in a separate process, because we're actually reusing that somewhere else. And then the last bit is an action. So then bringing in the Apex, because you may have noticed that when I click that renewal button, it automatically navigated me to the renewal opportunity that I created. So again, stepping into the user's shoes and going, if I've created a record, generally I want to see that record. I don't want to have to go and find that record that I've just created. So we have to use a little code to do that. Again, it's freely available online that you can use, or you can write your own stuff. But we're utilizing those different elements, those different components, those different bits of code to build something that's more robust, easier to use, and presenting that to the user to help guide them. So obviously from this type of process, the risk is high. You're actually losing business because people aren't doing what they're meant to be doing. So this one, when you're looking at your backlog, that's going to shoot right to the top of the priority list of going, let's sort this out, because we actually are going to lose money with this. But from within here, what we're doing is we're creating renewals through a walkthrough interface. So we're making it easier for the sales team to process that. We're bringing that in, so we're bringing the products automatically in. So we're ensuring things don't get forgotten about, because that's where some of the mistakes are going to happen, right? What products were on that original one? Oh, I can't remember. We're allowing the users to validate what they're doing before. So they might look at it and click the price and go, whoa, they're not going to pay that. Let's drop that increase in somewhere. And then we're automatically applying that increase. So we're putting it as a default, but we're allowing, a bit like in the last example, we're allowing configuration options so that we're not boxing people in going, you must put that 4% on top of that. We know with sales, sometimes you can get, you heavily discounted the first time round, you might get away with a little bit more, or you know that they are never going to pay that uplift, so you need to adjust that. So we make that easier for the salesperson rather than trying to manage that through the records itself. So in conclusion, what we've talked about today. So the choice is not low code or pro code. Let's be friends, let's put it all together, let's blend where we need, and we choose the right tools for the job. Look at the requirements from the user's perspective. So you are embedding it as part of the workflow and enhancing that process. Treat screen flows, along with other flows, a bit like Lego bricks. Create things that are smaller, reusable, things that you can join together to make these amazing models that you can build out of that. Not only will this help you with the building and simplify lots of different things, it will also allow you to more easily troubleshoot stuff. I don't know if you've ever tried to troubleshoot a flow where there's hundreds of nodes on the page and you're trying to figure out which one of these things has gone wrong. It is an absolute nightmare. So breaking that down into smaller modules makes it so much easier to troubleshoot those pieces. And also utilize what we've got. Salesforce have provided us with some great pre-built connectors to call standard actions, to call different pieces, like depending on what packages you have, you can use certain things, for example, like the Slack piece. And then also unofficial FS, it is unofficial. So use with caution. It might not be right for your business, but it's a great place to have a look at and play around with and do examples of things. We have had examples where you can't use that, but we can go, let's get that concept and build our own thing that does that, because all it is someone's built that. And most of it is also in GitHub as well, so you can see it in the back end as well. A lot of you may have noticed as well the QR code. So within that, not only have I put some of those resources like unofficial SF, the blog page of different things that you can do with the color coding. There's also a GitHub repo in there with those flows in it and some things. So if you want to install that into your own DevOrg, you can do that and have a crack at it and play around and see what I've got. As I will say with all of these things, it is not production ready. It is built for demo purposes only. So don't just install it into your production org. It's for a DevOrg to play around with. But that is everything from me.